I know it's more Rapunz and Bretonnia. Most of you probably won't be upset by that, but there is a very specific reason. There's also a very specific reason that it's Khorne again. Originally, I had planned to do another replay in this slot, but I decided to option in this one for, again, a very specific reason. So there's a spell that I think a lot of people are sleeping on. There's a ton of focus right now on Pit of Shades and other like stationary vortexes. There is actually a spell that's just straight up better than all of them, and that's this one right here, Dwellers Below. Because it's direct damage, shouldn't do any damage to friendly targets. Future Dov here, just pausing to say that is actually not correct. The 4 magical armor-piercing damage you see represented in the tooltip is an actual vortex that will damage your own units, so be wary of that. The damage over time effect, though, is direct damage, so that point still stands. And you'll think, oh, 4 damage per second, 100% AP seems decent, but it's not that crazy. Go look at the bottom, though. You'll see that it actually applies a damage over time effect that is close to something like Spirit Leech in terms of damage output to single targets, which makes this spell much better than Pit of Shades in one very specific way. It actually deals damage to all types of targets, whether they be low model count, high model count, or in between, whereas Pit of Shades won't really hurt single entities and monstrous infantry. Dwellers Below certainly will, at least with how the spell is currently implemented. This replay is from Felcon. I did want to also preface this by saying my conclusions in this video are based on a lot of replays I've seen recently from Felcon and others. A lot of them are way too one-sided to share on the channel. This is one of the least egregious. We've got Bretonnia versus Khorne here. He's coming in with a couple field trebuchets, protected by some peasant mobs. Not going to do a lot against Khorne Furies and stuff, but hey, I guess it's an effort. Got some Pox arrows here, questing knights as well. Plenty of questing knights, very cost-effective. So yeah, it's basically all mobs. Questing knights and archers with this character squad, with the defenders of the fleur-de-lis as well. And then we've got Scarbrand on the other side, some spawn of Khorne. Love the pick of Scarbrand in all matchups in land battle pretty much, even those with armor-piercing missiles. You can kind of make him work if you micro him well. Halberds are obviously a good choice. Spawner pretty decent here as well. Keep in mind, a lot of this stuff has spell resistance. Marauders of Khorne even have spell resistance, but certainly not charge resistance as they get lanced down by the defenders here. Rapunz charging in, and yeah, we're gonna watch for this damsel. Realistically, she needs like 1 or 2 good casts of Dwellers Below to more than pay for herself, so yeah, we'll just kind of watch the battle as it plays out, and you'll know when it's coming. Meanwhile, in the sunset here, knights charging downhill. They're going to be taking some significant damage. Notice how Felcon, not necessarily charging through his own cav, he'll kind of charge in and then bring in the infantry kind of secondary to try and screen as the cav pulls away. Like there, he kind of charged in the side and then pulls through his own infantry there in order to screen out and obviously use the peasant mobs to their best effectiveness to kind of let the knights pull away, charge back in. Here, he's also going to throw a huge kind of charge, kind of all in on this blob a little bit. Yeah, Scarbrand there taking some significant damage, but the knights in a nice surround here. Gonna beat down those Chaos Warhounds of Khorne, obviously, and a lot of the Khorne infantry even will be suffering somewhat. But let's get in close. Took up some beautiful cinematics as yeah, trebuchet shots come in. Scarbrand fights it out with the blob. Henri and Rapunz here will both be a pretty good 2v1 versus him. It's kind of RNG. If Scarbrand's able to kill either of them fast enough, it will be a pretty big problem. But I think Felcon already used 1 Dwellers kind of out in the periphery that I missed. Looks like he's got about 500 value, so it wasn't all that effective. I think it was just single casted on 1 unit, but just make a note of that. So the Damsel's got about 500 damage value right now. We'll check back on that in just a minute. Certainly, if it's off of cooldown, I don't know. I can't see Felcon's Winds of Magic. Really wish I could in replays so I could see kind of his build-up. I will say you shouldn't overcast Dwellers Below because it doesn't do any extra damage. It just has a greater effect on speed, which I suppose could be useful, but generally, unless the damage spells do extra damage when you overcast them, you basically shouldn't ever overcast them. But another benefit of kind of forcing a blob like this is that trebuchets will have a really good time shooting at this sort of wide target, even though their accuracy is absolutely awful. When they are shooting at this big of a target, they can definitely get some work done, but poor Henri takes an absolute beating there, just gets horribly, horribly killed. I think he's actually going to get killed by Scarbrand. The Knights charge back in, doing a good job cycle charging, but oh, here it comes. Okay, so Damsel's value we saw. Let's check one more time and just watch the kills rack up as the... I'm going to keep the health bars up as well. You can kind of see what's happening in between them. The spawn here getting hit by that damage over time effect. Even Skarbrand is taking significant damage from that Dwellers Below. And just from that one cast on the blob, it's 2,259 value. And keep in mind, there are only two, three infantry units in there. The rest were all monsters. So given the amount of damage that it did to those monstrous units, I definitely think the spell is bugged. And again, I've seen a lot worse. I've seen 4,000 value plus on like 3-4 casts of Dwellers Below in a single game, which is not that hard to do, honestly, especially in Domination. So definitely is a spell that needs some adjustment. Absolutely needs to be toned down, and you can see that that was a pretty back-breaking blow. I mean, arguably, yes, Khorne's definitely blobbed up there, probably should have spread their units out, and especially, like, spread the spawn out, try and, you know, get a little bit more of a formation going here, but it's definitely extremely hard when you're playing against a player as good as Falcon, cycle charging and screening with their cavalry effectively. Your units will maintain their attack order and then get interrupted by the infantry and just kind of get all skewampus out of position. Trust me, I've played against Falcon myself enough times to know it's almost impossible when he's on point with his cavalry micro to keep from blobbing up. But it's definitely one of those things, especially with how many really strong blob busting spells there are right now. You just cannot end up doing something like that. But I do think that the Dweller's damage over time effect needs to be nerfed. I think it should probably be cut in half, possibly, or so, just so it doesn't do so much single target and low model count damage. There's also nothing in the tooltip that says specifically how the damage scales in terms of the direct damage effect. I mean, most direct damage spells would say, like, strong against units with 25 or more, for example, right, for Fate of Yuna, which means it deals that amount of damage up to a maximum of 25 models, you know, so it will kill that many at a time, meaning if you go over that, it's fine, but going below that, you'll start to lose some of the efficiency on the damage. But it doesn't say that for Dwellers Below. I would need to look in some data mining and actually see what the values are for real, but just going by, you know, kind of feel, which it's hard to say with that very strong dot. It seems like it's probably hitting, I would guess, about 25 models also. I don't know. Maybe someone can look and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but certainly Khorne is suffering at this point. Skarbrand trying to rally his troops together as best he can, but the Knights are healthy enough that they can continue to cycle charge. Falcon also using the actual trebuchets to screen here. This is like a million IQ, you know, move right here to actually use the trebuchets to block Skarbrand's body in, and now collapse back with the cavalry. They even get a little bit of a downhill charge bonus buff. Certainly once he does his animations, he can push the trebuchets around, but yeah, kind of interesting. Skarbrand falls to the questing Knights, and that's going to be army losses for everything except the spawn, of course. So there you go. And in fact, we can even mathematically calculate that it does more damage than Spirit Leech to single entities, which is kind of hilarious. I mean, granted, it is a much more expensive spell than Spirit Leech, but just the comparison being as good as it is seems a little bit wrong. I mean, you just times that to maximum 67 damage, because the way that range works, it's basically giving you a range depending on the unit size you're using in the graphics settings. Since multiplayer is on Ultra, you would go with the highest value there, 67 times the duration of 15 seconds, and that's what, like 1,000 damage? Yeah. And I think Spirit Leech, we'll look at the duration in just a minute, but 221 kills, 2,300 damage value, the majority of that coming from a single cast of Dwellers Below against units with a little bit of magic resistance, it must be said. I mean, the Khorne spawn, the Khorne halberds, and even Skarbrand himself all have a little bit of magic resistance, and yet it just cuts straight through it. So a little bit overtuned, you could say. The rest of the build, I mean, Henri and Rapunzel definitely just got murdered by Skarbrand. Some of the questing Knights prove fairly cost-effective, and the trebuchets actually put in a pretty good performance. Pay for themselves both if you average their cost out. Peasant Archer is a little bit of a mixed bag. Could be tricky. Keep them alive against a like wide Khorne mobility build. Peasant mobs with 200 value. That's fantastic value. 33 kills. I don't know what happened there, but they must have fought like some warhounds or something while being buffed by Rapunzel. No idea. But still, very, very impressive. So, yeah, I mean, literally that Dwellers Below carried the entire game. It just seems a little too strong. And a lot of people are going to complain about me wanting to nerf stuff, but, you know, I would say the one-click button delete is something that even campaign players, you should want to do some actual tactics in a Total War game, in my opinion, and not just have these spells that are one-click delete literally any unit. It's not, granted, it's not going to just straight up delete single entities or low model count units, but it'll do enough damage that it's kind of out of whack. I think it's much stronger than it should be, so... Yeah, just to kind of summarize things here, if we look at the Empire, where is it? Or High Elves. I'm absolutely blind. We can actually look side by side, right? I wanted to check with Lore of Death for Spirit Leech. Yeah, 13-second duration, again, 67 damage. So it's actually the same scaling for the damage over time effect, which again, seems a little bit odd. This should be, it says weak versus single combatant in the spell tooltip, which leads me to believe this is not intended. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I mean, I would say if you are annoyed by people abusing Pit of Shades on you, you can just counteract, pick an Order faction, and take Dwellers Below, or just avoid this spell entirely. If you enjoy this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe. If you enjoy this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.